The Kenworth T680 semi-truck sat embedded 15 feet into what used to be a living room. Its diesel engine ticked as it cooled in the humid Georgia night, smoke curling from the shattered front wall of 3842 Maple Ridge Court. On the curb, 39-year-old Derek Matthews sat with his hands clasped between his knees, his commercial driver's license already placed neatly on the ground beside him. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was waiting. When Officer Lisa Chen of the Atlanta Police Department arrived at 10:14 p.m. on that August evening in 2009, she found a scene that defied logic. A fully loaded 18-wheeler had been deliberately driven through the front of a suburban home. 2 people were dead inside, and the driver, calm, collected, almost serene, was sitting on the curb like he was waiting for a bus. "I did it," Derek said before Officer Chen could even ask. "The security footage is still recording. You'll want to see it." What security footage? What had this mild-mannered truck driver seen that would drive him to commit an act of such calculated violence? And why, after destroying everything, was he so willing to cooperate? If you're drawn to true crime stories that explore the dark intersections of betrayal, surveillance, and irreversible choices, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another deep dive. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We read every single one. Now, let's go back to the beginning and uncover what really happened at 3842 Maple Ridge Court. Derek Matthews was a long-haul truck driver. For 15 years, he'd crisscrossed the American South, hauling everything from automotive parts to agricultural equipment. His spotless driving record and numerous safety awards from Consolidated Freight Lines made him one of their most reliable drivers. 80-hour work weeks weren't unusual. Neither were stretches of 10 to 14 days away from home. Home was a 2-story brick colonial in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. Derek and Monica Matthews, 36 years old, had spent most of their 13-year marriage as a stay-at-home mother to their daughter, Amber. But in early 2009, Monica had started a new venture, selling high-end skincare products through social media and local networking events. She called it her beauty empire, and Derek had been supportive, even proud. It gave her independence, purpose, something beyond the daily routines of domestic life. Their daughter, Amber, 14 years old, was spending the summer with her mother in Savannah. She'd been gone since late June, which meant the house on Maple Ridge Court was quieter than usual. Just Derek and Monica. Or so Derek thought. What Derek didn't know, what he wouldn't discover until late July, was that his wife hadn't been alone during his long absences, and the man who'd been keeping her company wasn't just a casual acquaintance. He was someone Derek had met, someone he'd shaken hands with at a neighborhood cookout the previous 4th of July. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to the moment Derek's world began to unravel. It was July 23, 2009, when Derek returned from a 2-week haul to Nashville and Memphis. He'd been delivering agricultural machinery to distribution centers across Tennessee, logging over 3,000 miles in 14 days. When he pulled his Kenworth into the driveway of 3842 Maple Ridge Court, the Georgia heat was oppressive, the kind that made asphalt shimmer and turned car interiors into ovens. Monica greeted him at the door with a hug, but it was brief, perfunctory, almost like an obligation. Derek noticed immediately. Monica had always been affectionate, especially after his long trips. This time, though, she seemed distracted. Her phone buzzed in her hand, and she glanced at the screen even as she hugged him. Over dinner, takeout Thai food eaten mostly in silence, Derek watched his wife. She picked at her pad Thai, barely making eye contact. When he asked about her skincare business, she gave short, vague answers. "Good," she said. "Sales are up." When he asked about Amber, she smiled for the first time. "She's having a blast with Mom, wants to stay another few weeks." After dinner, Monica retreated to the bedroom, claiming exhaustion. Derek heard her voice through the door, soft, muffled, laughing. She was on the phone with someone. When he knocked to ask who she was talking to, she said, "Just a client, business stuff." Derek went to his home office, a converted spare bedroom on the first floor. He'd set up the room as his personal space, a place to handle paperwork, manage his route schedules, and decompress after weeks on the road. His laptop sat on the desk, and next to it, a small monitor connected to the home security system. 3 months earlier, following a series of break-ins in the neighborhood, Derek had installed a Nest HD security camera in the hallway near the front door. The installation had been straightforward, and the camera's motion detection feature gave him peace of mind while he was away. He could check the feed from his phone or laptop, see who was coming and going, make sure everything was secure. That night, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, Derek logged into the security system and began scrolling through the footage from the past 2 weeks. At first, everything looked normal. Monica leaving for her beauty consultations, Monica returning with grocery bags, Monica collecting the mail. Standard domestic routines. But then, around the 5th day of footage, something changed. The camera captured Monica opening the front door to a man. He was tall, well-dressed in a charcoal gray suit, late 20s, carrying a leather messenger bag. They didn't shake hands, they hugged. Not a polite, friendly hug, an intimate one, familiar, comfortable. Derek's hands froze on the keyboard. He rewound the footage and watched again. The man's face came into partial view as they stepped into the hallway. Derek recognized him immediately. His name was Troy Henderson. He was a real estate agent who worked for Peachtree Properties, one of the top agencies in Atlanta. Derek had met him at the neighborhood's 4th of July block party the previous summer. Troy had been charming, confident, the kind of guy who knew how to work a room. He talked to Monica for over an hour that day, discussing the local market, investment properties, opportunities for business collaborations. At the time, Derek had thought nothing of it. Monica was building her skincare business. Networking was part of the job. But watching the security footage now, seeing Troy's hand rest on the small of Monica's back as they walked toward the living room, Derek felt his stomach turn. He continued watching. The camera angle didn't capture the living room, only the hallway and front door. But over the next several hours of footage, Troy didn't leave. His black Audi A4 remained parked on the street outside, and when he finally emerged just after 8 p.m., Monica walked him to the door. They kissed. Not a peck on the cheek, a real kiss, long, lingering. Derek's breath came in short, shallow bursts. He scrolled forward through the footage. Troy's visits weren't isolated, they were frequent. Every few days during Derek's 2-week absence, Troy would arrive in the late afternoon, stay for hours, and leave after dark. Always the same routine, always when the neighborhood was quiet. Derek saved the video files to an external hard drive, his hands shaking as he cataloged each visit. The timestamps showed a clear pattern. Monica had been entertaining Troy Anderson in their home, the home Derek had worked 80-hour weeks to pay for, while he was 400 miles away hauling freight through Tennessee. In the next room, Derek could hear Monica's muffled laughter through the bedroom door. She was still on the phone, still talking to someone in hushed, intimate tones. Derek sat in the dark office, staring at the frozen image on his screen. Troy Anderson's face caught in the glow of the hallway light, Monica's smile as she let him in, the kiss at the door. Something inside Derek broke that night, but he didn't confront Monica. Not yet. Instead, he began to plan. Derek spent the next 3 days in a haze of surveillance and suspicion. He didn't tell Monica what he'd discovered. He played the role of the oblivious husband, going through the motions while his mind churned with images from the security footage. Every time Monica left the house, claiming she had a client meeting or a networking event, Derek wondered if she was meeting Troy. During one of Monica's absences, Derek installed a second Nest HD camera in the living room. He positioned it carefully on a bookshelf, hidden among family photos and decorative objects. The lens had a clear view of the beige sectional sofa, a piece of furniture Derek and Monica had picked out together 3 years earlier for their 10th anniversary. The thought of that couch being used for their betrayal made Derek's jaw clench. He concealed the camera's power cable behind the bookshelf and adjusted the angle to maximize coverage. Then he tested the feed on his laptop. Perfect. Now he had eyes on both the hallway and the living room. Derek returned to the older footage, this time with a sharper focus on Troy Anderson's appearances. The real estate agent's confidence was unmistakable. Expensive suits, Italian leather shoes, a Rolex gleaming on his wrist. According to his LinkedIn profile, Troy had closed over $4 million in residential sales during the first half of 2009. He was a rising star in Atlanta's competitive real estate market, frequently featured in local business publications and social media posts showing him at high-end property showings. Derek remembered the 4th of July party where they'd first met. Troy had been surrounded by neighbors, holding court with stories about the housing market and investment opportunities. He'd flirted with Monica openly, and Derek had dismissed it as harmless. Now those memories took on a sinister edge. The sectional sofa. That couch had been a symbol of their life together, a place where they'd watched movies with Amber, where Derek had fallen asleep after long hauls. The idea that Monica and Troy had used it for their affair filled Derek with a rage so intense it scared him. On the evening of July 26th, Derek received his next assignment from Consolidated Freight Lines, a 4-day round trip to Jacksonville, Florida, hauling industrial equipment. He was scheduled to leave the following afternoon. Derek told Monica about the trip over breakfast. She barely looked up from her phone. "Okay," she said. "Drive safe." That was it. No kiss goodbye. No "I'll miss you." Just a distracted acknowledgement as she scrolled through her messages. Derek spent the rest of that day preparing, but he wasn't preparing for Jacksonville. He was preparing for something else entirely. On the morning of July 27th, Derek performed his usual pre-trip inspection of his Kenworth T680. He checked the tires, the brakes, the lights. He logged into the Consolidated Freight Line system and confirmed his route to Jacksonville. Then he said goodbye to Monica, who was sitting on the back patio with her phone, sipping iced coffee. "See you in a few days," Derek said. Monica waved without looking up. Derek climbed into the cab of his truck and pulled out of the driveway. He headed south on I-75 as if making his way toward Jacksonville, but after 30 minutes he exited the interstate and doubled back, navigating through surface streets until he reached an abandoned industrial park on the outskirts of Atlanta. The industrial park, formerly a textile manufacturing facility, had been vacant for years. Its crumbling buildings and overgrown parking lots provided perfect concealment for an 18-wheeler. Derek positioned his Kenworth between 2 defunct warehouses, hidden from the main road. From this location, Derek established a mobile surveillance command center inside his truck's sleeper compartment. He connected his laptop to both security cameras through a 4G mobile hotspot, allowing him to monitor his home in real time. The setup gave him comprehensive coverage. The hallway camera capturing arrivals and departures, the living room camera showing everything that happened on that goddamn couch. For 2 days, Derek watched. Monica maintained her usual routine, leaving for beauty consultations, running errands, returning home. She made frequent phone calls from the privacy of the bedroom. Derek's suspicions were confirmed when, on the second day, Troy Anderson's black Audi A4 appeared on the street outside 3842 Maple Ridge Court. Derek sat forward in his seat, his eyes locked on the laptop screen. The timestamp read 6:47 p.m. Monica opened the front door. She was wearing a red cocktail dress Derek had never seen before. Troy stepped inside, carrying a bottle of wine and his leather messenger bag. He kissed her immediately, his hands on her waist, pulling her close. The hallway camera captured their embrace. Then they moved into the living room, and the second camera took over. Derek watched as Monica and Troy settled onto the sectional sofa. They poured wine into crystal glasses, glasses Monica had insisted they saved for special occasions. They laughed, they talked. Their body language was easy, comfortable, intimate. And then Troy leaned in and kissed her again. Monica responded eagerly, her arms around his neck. The kiss deepened. Troy's hand moved to the zipper of her dress. Derek's hands gripped the steering wheel of his truck so hard his knuckles turned white. His wedding ring, a simple gold band he'd worn for 13 years, glinted in the dim light of the cab. The ring felt like a lie now, a symbol of vows that Monica had broken. The surveillance footage continued. Monica and Troy, together on the couch Derek had paid for. in the home Derek had worked 80-hour weeks to afford, while he was supposed to be 400 miles away in Jacksonville. Derek's mind went to a dark place. He thought about momentum, about force, about the devastating power of 40 tons of steel traveling at speed. He thought about impact velocities, about the structural integrity of residential walls, about the Kenworth's reinforced front bumper designed to withstand highway collisions. The truck's diesel engine rumbled to life beneath him. The sound was deep, powerful, almost alive. Derek put the transmission in gear and pulled out of the industrial park. Derek drove through Atlanta's evening traffic with mechanical precision. His phone, mounted on the dashboard, continued streaming the security footage. Monica and Troy were still on the couch, oblivious to what was coming. They were laughing about something, their wine glasses refilled, their bodies close. Derek's route took him through familiar streets. He'd driven these roads 1,000 times, knew every turn, every traffic light. But tonight, the city looked different, alien, as if he were seeing it through a stranger's eyes. He thought about Amber. His daughter was in Savannah, safe with her grandmother, unaware that her world was about to implode. What would this do to her? How would she ever recover from what he was about to do? But the rage was stronger than the guilt. The images from the security footage played on a loop in his mind. Monica's smile as she let Troy in, Troy's hand on her back, the kiss at the door, the wine, the laughter, the sectional sofa. Derek turned onto Maple Ridge Court at 10:09 p.m. The street was quiet, most of the houses dark, except for the occasional porch light or flickering TV screen. Number 3842 stood out, its living room window glowing warm and inviting. Through that window, Derek could see the actual scene matching the footage on his phone. Monica and Troy on the couch, glasses of wine in hand, completely unaware. Derek positioned his Kenworth at the far end of the block, facing the house. The truck's powerful headlights illuminated the residential street, casting long shadows across manicured lawns. He revved the engine once, twice. The sound echoed through the neighborhood, drawing faces to windows. On his phone screen, Derek saw Monica and Troy look up at the noise. Their expressions changed from confusion to alarm, as they recognized the distinctive sound of a semi-truck engine. Monica stood, her wine glass falling to the floor. Troy turned toward the window. They saw the headlights. They understood. But it was too late. Derek's foot slammed down on the accelerator. The Kenworth T680 accelerated down Maple Ridge Court, its Cummins X15 engine generating maximum torque. The truck's headlights blazed as 80,000 pounds of steel built momentum. Derek's hands were steady on the wheel, his years of professional driving experience guiding the vehicle with terrifying precision. At exactly 10:13 p.m., the semi-truck collided with the front of 3842 Maple Ridge Court. The impact focused on the living room area where Monica Matthews and Troy Anderson were standing, frozen in horror. The collision was catastrophic. The truck's massive chrome grille, designed to protect against highway debris, became a battering ram that obliterated the home's front wall. The wooden frame splintered like kindling. The bay window exploded in a shower of glass. The sectional sofa, that anniversary gift, that symbol of betrayal, was crushed beneath the truck's bumper. The security cameras captured the final moments before being destroyed in the impact, their feeds cut to static on Derek's phone, the screens going dark. The crash generated a chain reaction throughout the structure. Support beams snapped under the force. The second floor sagged, then partially collapsed into the living room, adding tons of debris to the destruction. The truck's momentum carried it 15 feet into the house before finally stopping, its engine still running amid the chaos. Emergency calls flooded the Atlanta Police Department's dispatch center. Neighbors reported an explosion. Others said a semi-truck had driven through a house. The sound of the crash echoed through the subdivision, triggering car alarms, security lights, and screams from residents emerging onto their lawns in shock. Derek Matthews climbed down from the truck's cab with the same methodical calm he'd displayed throughout his 15-year driving career. His work boots crunched on broken glass and splintered drywall as he walked through the devastation. Dust and smoke from ruptured electrical wiring filled the air, illuminated by the truck's headlights still burning in the wreckage. The living room, once a space of domestic comfort, had become a tomb. Monica's red dress and Troy's gray suit were now covered in white dust from the collapsed ceiling. Their bodies lay motionless beneath the debris, partially visible in the rubble. The wine bottle and crystal glasses were shattered, red wine mixing with other fluids on the destruction-strewn floor. Derek didn't look at the bodies. He walked calmly to the curb, sat down, and placed his hands on his knees. His commercial driver's license was already in his hand. He set it on the ground beside him, as if presenting evidence. His Consolidated Freight Line's ID badge still hung from his shirt pocket, the plastic rectangle catching the light. The first neighbor to reach the scene was Harold Chen from 3844 Maple Ridge Court. Harold, a retired EMT, ran toward the wreckage, but stopped when he saw the bodies. He checked for vital signs from a safe distance, but it was clear there was nothing he could do. Other neighbors gathered behind the police tape, their phones out, recording the aftermath. Officer Lisa Chen of the Atlanta Police Department arrived at 10:14 p.m., less than 60 seconds after the crash. She found Derek exactly where he'd seated himself, maintaining an eerie composure. When she approached, Derek looked up before she could ask a question. "I did it," he said. His voice was calm, almost matter-of-fact. "The security footage is still recording. You'll want to see it." Officer Chen radioed for backup and medical assistance, though it was clear from the devastation that no one inside could have survived. She handcuffed Derek and read him his Miranda rights. Derek didn't resist. He didn't protest. He simply nodded as each right was explained to him. "Do you understand these rights?" Officer Chen asked. "Yes, I understand." The Atlanta Fire Department arrived moments later, followed by paramedics and more police units. Fire Chief Marcus Williams immediately called for structural engineers to assess the building's stability before recovery efforts could begin. The house that had stood proudly on Maple Ridge Court for years was now a horrific tableau of destruction, its facade torn open to reveal the tragic scene within. As Derek was placed in the back of a police cruiser, neighbors gathered in small groups, their faces pale with shock. Children peered out from behind their parents, not understanding what they were witnessing. The sight of Derek Matthews, a man many of them knew, had waved to, had barbecued with, being arrested for double homicide was surreal. The Kenworth remained embedded in the house, its engine finally silent. Emergency personnel worked to secure the scene, erecting floodlights that turned the night into harsh, artificial day. The bodies of Monica Matthews and Troy Anderson were recovered just after midnight, their identities confirmed through personal effects found in the debris. In the police cruiser, Derek sat with his head back against the seat, his eyes closed. Officer Chen watched him through the rearview mirror. He wasn't crying, he wasn't shaking. He looked, if anything, relieved. When they arrived at the Atlanta Police Department's Central Precinct, Derek was processed and placed in an interrogation room. Detectives Sarah Park and Michael O'Brien entered at 11:47 p.m., carrying a laptop and several evidence bags. "Mr. Matthews," Detective Park began, "you said something about security footage. What did you mean?" Derek looked up at her. "My home security system. 2 cameras, one in the hallway, one in the living room. They recorded everything." Detective O'Brien opened the laptop. "Everything?" "Everything," Derek repeated. "My wife and that man, their affair, what they were doing when I drove the truck through the wall." The detectives exchanged glances. "And where is this footage now?" Derek provided them with his login credentials for the cloud-based security system. Within minutes, they were viewing the recordings. The footage showed exactly what Derek had described: Monica and Troy's affair, captured in high-definition detail, time-stamped and geotagged. But the footage also showed something else. It showed Derek's surveillance operation, the cameras he'd installed, the monitoring he'd conducted, the deliberate planning that had led to this moment. "Mr. Matthews," Detective Park said, You understand that this footage, it doesn't help your case. If anything, it demonstrates premeditation. Derek nodded slowly. I know, but you needed to see it. You needed to understand why. Why you killed 2 people. Why I destroyed everything. The case against Derek Matthews was overwhelming. The footage alone would have been enough, but investigators found additional evidence that painted a picture of calculated revenge. Derek's internet search history revealed queries about the structural integrity of residential buildings, the impact force of commercial vehicles, and Georgia's homicide laws. His GPS data showed he'd never gone to Jacksonville as scheduled, but instead had remained in Atlanta, surveilling his home from the abandoned industrial park. The truck's maintenance records confirmed it had been in perfect working order. No mechanical failure, no brake malfunction, no plausible claim of accident. Derek had driven that Kenworth through his home with full intention and devastating precision. The case was assigned to the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, with prosecutor Angela Rodriguez leading the charge. Rodriguez, known for her aggressive prosecution of domestic violence cases, approached the Matthews case with particular intensity. To her, this wasn't just a double homicide. It was a man who'd taken the law into his own hands, who'd executed 2 people without trial or due process. Derek's defense was taken up by veteran criminal defense attorney Robert Huang, a man who'd built his career on defending the seemingly indefensible. Huang knew the facts were against him, but he believed there might be a path to arguing diminished capacity or extreme emotional disturbance, legal concepts that could potentially reduce a murder charge to manslaughter. The trial began on March 8, 2010, at the Fulton County Superior Court. Judge Patricia Wilson presided, her courtroom packed with journalists, family members, and curious observers. The case had attracted national media attention, with cable news networks running segments on surveillance, infidelity, and revenge, and legal analysts debating whether discovering a spouse's affair could ever justify homicide. The prosecution's opening statement was delivered by Angela Rodriguez herself. She stood before the jury, 7 women and 5 men, ranging in age from 24 to 68, and laid out her case with clinical precision. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, this case is about choice. Derek Matthews made a series of choices that led to the deaths of 2 people. He chose to install hidden cameras in his home. He chose to monitor his wife's activities. He chose to lie to his employer about his route. He chose to hide his truck and conduct surveillance. And ultimately, he chose to drive 40 tons of steel through the front of his own house, killing 2 human beings. Rodriguez played the security footage for the jury. The courtroom fell silent as they watched Monica and Troy on the sectional sofa, laughing and drinking wine. Then came the sound of the truck's engine revving, Monica and Troy's expressions changing from confusion to terror. The sudden cut to static as the cameras were destroyed. Several jurors looked away. One woman in the front row covered her mouth. Infidelity is painful, Rodriguez continued. It's a betrayal that cuts deep, but pain does not give us the right to kill. Mr. Matthews had options. He could have confronted his wife. He could have filed for divorce. He could have walked away. Instead, he chose murder. The defense's opening statement, delivered by Robert Huang, took a different approach. Huang didn't deny what Derek had done. The evidence was too overwhelming for that. Instead, he focused on Derek's mental state, his years of dedication to his family, and the devastating psychological impact of discovering his wife's affair. Derek Matthews, Huang told the jury, was a man who spent 15 years building a life. He worked 80-hour weeks driving trucks across the South. He missed birthdays, holidays, family dinners, all so he could provide for his wife and daughter. He was, by all accounts, a good man, a loving father, a faithful husband. Huang paused, letting the words sink in. And then, in a matter of minutes, watching security footage on a laptop screen, Derek Matthews discovered that the life he'd built was a lie. His wife, the woman he'd trusted, loved, supported, had been carrying on an affair in their home, in their bed, on the couch they'd picked out together, while he was 400 miles away working to support her. Huang walked closer to the jury box. "I'm not asking you to excuse what Derek did. What I'm asking is that you understand it, that you see how a good man pushed beyond his limits can break. Derek Matthews didn't wake up one morning and decide to kill two people. He was driven to it by a betrayal so profound, so complete, that it shattered his sense of reality." The prosecution's case proceeded methodically over the next week. Digital forensics expert Dr. James Lee testified about the security system Derek had installed, emphasizing the sophistication of his surveillance operation. The timestamps on the footage showed Derek had been monitoring his home for days, watching his wife's affair unfold in real time. "This wasn't a crime of passion," Dr. Lee testified. "This was a crime of planning. Mr. Matthews had time to think, time to change his mind. He didn't." GPS data from Derek's truck, presented by investigator Thomas Reed, proved Derek had never gone to Jacksonville as scheduled. Instead, the truck had remained stationary at the abandoned industrial park for 2 days while Derek conducted his surveillance. "The GPS doesn't lie," Reed stated. "Mr. Matthews deviated from his authorized route and concealed his location from his employer. This demonstrates clear premeditation." Perhaps the most damaging testimony came from Derek's internet search history. Computer forensics specialist Dr. Maya Patel presented a timeline of Derek's searches in the days following his discovery of Monica's affair. How much force to collapse a wall? Semi-truck impact velocity. Georgia homicide laws. First-degree murder versus manslaughter, Georgia. Can security footage be used as evidence? These searches, Dr. Patel testified, show that Mr. Matthews was researching not just how to commit these murders, but also the legal consequences he would face. He knew exactly what he was doing. The defense's strategy focused on Derek's emotional state and the psychological trauma of discovering infidelity. Psychiatrist Dr. Elena Reyes testified about acute stress disorder and how extreme emotional trauma can impair judgment and impulse control.
"When someone discovers a spouse's infidelity," Dr. Reyes explained, "especially in such a visceral way, watching it unfold on video, the psychological impact can be devastating. It can trigger what we call an acute stress reaction, where the person's ability to think rationally is severely compromised." But on cross-examination, Prosecutor Rodriguez dismantled this argument. "Dr. Reyes, you testified that acute stress can impair judgment, but Mr. Matthews' actions show significant planning, don't they? He installed cameras, he monitored the footage, he researched impact velocities, he lied to his employer, he positioned his truck for maximum effect. Does that sound like impaired judgment to you?" Dr. Reyes hesitated. "Stress can manifest in different ways. Yes or no, doctor? Does premeditated planning indicate impaired judgment?" "Not necessarily." The defense also called character witnesses who painted Derek as a devoted family man. Colleagues from Consolidated Freight Lines testified about his 15-year safety record, his reliability, his professionalism. Neighbors from Maple Ridge Court described him as quiet, helpful, always willing to lend a hand. But these testimonies were undercut by Monica's best friend, Christine Williams, who painted a very different picture of the Matthews marriage. "Monica felt trapped," Christine testified, her voice shaking. "Derek was controlling. He checked her phone constantly. He questioned where she'd been, who she'd talked to. She felt like she was being watched all the time." "And was she?" Rodriguez asked. "Being watched?" Christine nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, he had cameras everywhere. She didn't even know." The revelation that Derek had been monitoring Monica even before discovering the affair shifted the narrative. What had seemed like a betrayed husband's surveillance suddenly looked like controlling, abusive behavior. Troy Anderson's character also became a point of contention. Colleagues from Peachtree Properties testified about Troy's pattern of pursuing relationships with married clients. 3 formal complaints had been filed against him over the past 2 years, alleging inappropriate behavior and boundary violations. The defense used this information to paint Troy as a predator who targeted vulnerable women. But Judge Wilson limited this line of questioning, ruling that Troy's past behavior didn't justify his murder. The trial's most emotional moment came when Amber Matthews, Derek and Monica's 15-year-old daughter, via video link from her grandmother's home in Savannah. Prosecutor Rodriguez had wanted to call her as a witness, but defense attorney Huang fought hard to keep her off the stand, arguing it would traumatize the girl further. Judge Wilson compromised, allowing Amber to testify remotely with a child psychologist present. Amber appeared on the courtroom's video screen, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. She described her father as loving but increasingly paranoid in the months before the murders. He kept asking Mom where she was going, who she was talking to on the phone. He'd check her car's mileage when she got home. It was like he was waiting for her to do something wrong. "Did you know about the security cameras?" Rodriguez asked gently. Amber shook her head. "Not until after. The police told me. Dad had put cameras all over the house, even in my room." A gasp went through the courtroom. Several jurors looked at Derek with visible disgust. "How do you feel about your father now?" Rodriguez asked again. Amber's face crumpled. "I don't know. He killed my mom, but he's still my dad. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel." The testimony devastated any remaining sympathy the jury might have had for Derek. A man who'd put surveillance cameras in his teenage daughter's room wasn't a protective father, he was a controller. After 10 days of testimony, closing arguments began. Prosecutor Rodriguez went first, standing before the jury with the confidence of someone who knew they'd won. "Derek Matthews wants you to believe he's a victim, a man driven to murder by his wife's betrayal, but the evidence tells a different story. It tells the story of a controlling husband who monitored his wife's every move, who installed hidden cameras throughout their home, including their teenage daughter's bedroom, who, when he discovered his wife's affair, didn't seek counseling or file for divorce. Instead, he planned and executed a double homicide."
Rodriguez gestured toward the evidence table, where the laptop containing the security footage sat as Exhibit A. That footage doesn't just show Monica and Troy's affair. It shows Derek Matthews' surveillance operation. It shows his planning. It shows his choice. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what this case is really about. Choice. Derek Matthews chose to kill 2 people, and now you must choose to hold him accountable. Defense attorney Robert Huang's closing was more subdued. He knew the facts were against him, but he made one final appeal to the jury's empathy. "None of us," Huang began, "can truly know what we would do if we discovered our spouse's betrayal in the way Derek Matthews did, watching it unfold on a screen, seeing the intimacy, the laughter, the wine, the couch you picked out together, all of it happening in the home you worked 80 hours a week to afford." Huang paused, making eye contact with each juror. "I'm not asking you to excuse murder. I'm asking you to understand how a good man can break, how betrayal can drive someone to do something unthinkable. The prosecution wants you to see Derek as a monster. I'm asking you to see him as a human being who made a terrible choice in a moment of unbearable pain." But even as he spoke, Huang knew it wasn't enough. The surveillance footage, the internet searches, the GPS data, it all pointed to premeditation. And under Georgia law, premeditated murder was first-degree murder, carrying a mandatory sentence of life without parole at Georgia State Prison in Reidsville. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned to the courtroom, their faces were somber. The foreman, a 52-year-old accountant named Robert Mills, stood to deliver the verdict. "On the count of murder in the first degree for the death of Monica Matthews, how do you find? Guilty. On the count of murder in the first degree for the death of Troy Anderson, how do you find? Guilty." Derek showed no visible reaction. He sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the defense table, his expression blank. In the gallery, Amber Matthews sobbed into her grandmother's shoulder. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. On April 2, 2010, Judge Patricia Wilson delivered Derek Matthews' sentence. The courtroom was packed with the same crowd that had attended the trial: journalists,
family members, curious observers. Judge Wilson addressed Derek directly before pronouncing sentence. "Mr. Matthews, I've presided over many difficult cases in my career, but few have been as disturbing as this one. You didn't just kill 2 people, you destroyed families. You traumatized your daughter. You shattered a community's sense of safety." She paused, looking down at the paperwork before her. "The evidence shows you had time to make different choices. You could have confronted your wife. You could have left. You could have sought help. Instead, you chose to monitor her, to surveil her, to plan her death and the death of Troy Anderson. And then you executed that plan with the precision of your professional training." Judge Wilson's voice hardened. "Some might argue that discovering your wife's infidelity justifies what you did. I reject that argument entirely. Betrayal, no matter how painful, does not give us the right to take another person's life. You made that choice, Mr. Matthews, and now you will live with the consequences." The sentence, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole at Georgia State Prison in Reidsville. Derek would serve 2 consecutive life sentences, 1 for each victim. Derek was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. He didn't look back at Amber or his mother, both of whom were crying in the gallery. He simply walked forward, shoulders squared, accepting his fate. Outside the courthouse, Troy Anderson's parents, Richard and Susan Anderson, made a brief statement to the press. "Our son made mistakes, but he didn't deserve to die for them. No one does. Derek Matthews took Troy from us, and for that we will never forgive him."
Monica's family declined to make a statement, but their attorney released a written response. "While we grieve for Monica and acknowledge the pain of infidelity, we cannot condone the violence that took her life. Derek Matthews destroyed not only his wife and Troy Anderson, but also his daughter's future. There are no winners in this tragedy." The house at 3842 Maple Ridge Court stood vacant for over a year after the murders. The front wall had been temporarily repaired to prevent further structural damage, but the interior remained a gutted shell. Local teenagers dared each other to approach the property at night, spreading rumors about ghostly figures and strange sounds. In the spring of 2011, a demolition crew finally arrived to tear down what remained of the structure. Dozens of neighbors gathered to watch, many of them filming on their phones. The demolition took less than 6 hours. By evening, all that remained was an empty lot surrounded by chain-link fencing. That empty lot became an unofficial memorial. For months, people left flowers along the fence, roses, lilies, carnations. Some left notes: "Justice for Monica," "R.I.P. Troy," "Pray for Amber." The memorial served as a reminder of what had happened, a wound in the neighborhood's otherwise pristine facade. Amber Matthews moved to Savannah permanently, living with her maternal grandmother, Eleanor Pierce. The transition was difficult. Amber struggled with depression, anxiety, and survivor's guilt. She saw a therapist twice a week, working through the trauma of losing both parents in a single night, one to murder, one to prison. Her room in her grandmother's house was painted a soft lavender. On the walls hung carefully selected photos from before the tragedy: family vacations to Destin Beach, her 13th birthday party, a picture of her father teaching her to ride a bike. These fragments of happiness seemed to belong to another life, a before time that could never be recovered. On her 16th birthday, November 14, 2010, Amber received a letter. It was postmarked from Georgia State Prison in Reidsville. She recognized her father's neat, precise handwriting, the same hand that had helped her with math homework, that had signed her report cards, that had written "I love you" on birthday cards. Amber stared at the envelope for 3 days before opening it. "My dearest Amber, I know I have no right to write to you. I know I've taken everything from you, your mother, your home, your sense of safety. I destroyed your childhood and cast a shadow over your future that you'll carry for the rest of your life. There are no words to express the depth of my regret. Not a day passes that I don't think about what I've done. Your mother's smile, her laugh, the way she used to sing while making breakfast. These are things you should still have. I stole them from you, and that knowledge is a weight I'll carry until I die. I want you to know something, though. What I did wasn't your mother's fault. Yes, she made choices that hurt me, but my response was my own. I could have walked away. I could have sought help. Instead, I let rage consume me, and I committed an act of unspeakable violence. You asked me once, when you were 7, what the most important thing in the world was. Do you remember? I said family. I believed that. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what family really means. It's not about control or possession. It's about love, trust, and letting go when necessary. I failed you, Amber. I failed your mother. I failed myself. And I will spend the rest of my life in this prison, not the one with bars and concrete, but the one I've built in my own mind. If you never want to hear from me again, I understand. But if you do, I'm here, and I'm sorry. So sorry. With endless love and bottomless regret, Dad. Amber read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in a shoebox under her bed, the first of what would become many letters from her father.
The letters arrived monthly, each one filled with memories, regrets, and attempts at fatherly guidance that seemed tragically out of place. Derek asked about her grades, her friends, her plans for college. He shared stories from her childhood, as if trying to preserve some connection to the man he used to be. Each letter ended the same way, with endless love and bottomless regret, Dad. Amber kept every letter, but never responded. She couldn't find the words. How do you talk to the father who killed your mother? How do you reconcile love and horror? How do you forgive the unforgivable? Her therapist, Dr. Rachel Kornfeld, suggested that writing back might help with healing, but Amber wasn't ready. Maybe she never would be. On a rainy evening in November 2013, 4 years after the murders, Amber sat cross-legged on her bed, reading Derek's latest letter. Outside her window, thunder rolled across Savannah, much like it had on that August night in Atlanta when everything changed. I saw a family of cardinals outside my cell window yesterday, Derek wrote. The father was teaching his young ones to fly. I remembered how you used to love watching birds in our backyard, how you'd name each one that visited our feeder. Do you still notice the cardinals, Amber? Or is that another innocent joy I've tainted with my actions? Tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. Amber touched the wet spots gently, her fingers tracing her father's words. On her wall hung a photo from her 14th birthday, the last one they'd celebrated together before everything fell apart. In the picture, Derek stood behind her as she blew out the candles, his hands resting protectively on her shoulders. The father in that photo seemed like a stranger now, yet she could still feel the ghost of his hands on her shoulders, could still remember the rumble of his laugh. Her reflection in the bedroom mirror caught her attention. People often told her she had her mother's eyes and her father's smile, a genetic legacy that felt like a blessing and a curse. She was becoming a young woman in a world where both her parents existed only in memory and prison records. Their choices and fates were inexorably woven into her own story, a burden she'd carry forever. The letter continued. The hardest part of my punishment isn't the concrete walls or the endless routine. It's knowing that I forever altered how you see the world, how you understand love, trust, and family. I robbed you of your innocence, Amber, and for that, I'm truly sorry. I've started teaching other inmates to read in the prison library. Sometimes I imagine it's you sitting across from me, like when we used to read together before bedtime. I know I have no right to hope for forgiveness, but I hope that somehow, someday, you'll find peace with who I was, who I became, and most importantly, who you choose to be despite it all. Amber set the letter down and stared at the ceiling. Outside, the rain continued to fall, a steady rhythm that matched her thoughts. Forgiveness seemed impossible, but perhaps one day she could find peace, not for her father, for herself. Today, Derek Matthews remains incarcerated at Georgia State Prison, serving 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He's now 54 years old and has been behind bars for over 14 years. According to prison records, he's been a model inmate, teaching literacy classes, working in the library, staying out of trouble. But no amount of good behavior can change what he did. Amber Matthews is now 29 years old. She graduated from the University of Georgia with a degree in social work and now works as a counselor for children of incarcerated parents. She's used her own trauma to help others navigate the impossible terrain of loving someone who committed terrible crimes. She's never visited her father in prison. The letters continue to arrive, and she continues to keep them in that shoebox under her bed. She's read every one, but she's never written back. Maybe she never will.
The empty lot at 3842 Maple Ridge Court was eventually purchased by a developer and turned into a small community park. There's a bench there now, with a plaque that reads, "In memory of Monica Matthews and Troy Anderson. May we all choose peace over violence." The case of Derek Matthews remains one of the most discussed domestic violence cases in Georgia legal history. It's studied in law schools as an example of premeditated murder disguised as a crime of passion. It's discussed in psychology courses as a case study in surveillance, control, and the devastating consequences of betrayal. But beyond the legal and academic analysis, it's a story about human fragility, about how quickly love can turn to rage, about how surveillance technology can become a tool of destruction, and about how one moment of violence can shatter countless lives. Derek Matthews made a choice on that August night in 2009. He chose revenge over healing, violence over peace, and in doing so, he destroyed not just 2 lives, but 3, including his own. The security cameras that revealed his wife's betrayal ultimately sealed his fate, providing the evidence that sent him to prison for life. In his quest to uncover the truth, Derek created the very tools that would condemn him. It's a bitter irony he lives with every day. When asked by a journalist in 2015 if he regretted installing those cameras, Derek said, "I regret everything. Every choice I made that led to that night. But the cameras, they just showed me what I didn't want to see. The real mistake was what I did with that knowledge." This case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about betrayal, surveillance, and the limits of human tolerance. Can infidelity ever justify violence? Does discovering a spouse's affair through surveillance make the betrayal worse? And at what point does grief and rage overwhelm our capacity for reason? Derek Matthews thought he was protecting his marriage by installing those cameras. Instead, he created a front-row seat to his own destruction. And when faced with that destruction, he made a choice that no amount of pain or betrayal can justify. If this story affected you, if it made you think about the devastating consequences of revenge, or if you're interested in how surveillance technology can both reveal truth and destroy lives, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. And if you found this deep dive compelling, please subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, and share this video with others who appreciate true crime stories that explore the darkest corners of human nature. Thanks for watching. Remember, the choices we make in our darkest moments define us forever. Choose wisely.